Hello, and welcome to Twin Study After Dark. I'm your host, Sallie, joined by my co-host, Katie. We're identical twin sisters. We invite you to join us as we investigate our similarities and differences in all things life has to offer. Hello, and welcome to Twin Study After Dark Study Breaks. I'm your host, Sallie, and I'm joined today with Bev Mitelman. She is a certified attachment practitioner, founder of Securely Loved. She is an author, past executive leader, and university lecturer. She dedicates her life to helping adults in the realm of personal growth as well as professional development. Welcome, Bev. Hello.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to hear about attachment style and how that's different for even twins.
Yeah, it is. It's such a wonderful question, right? And people love to study twins for this reason, right? To try and discern certain things around nature versus nurture.
Yeah.
Um, and Dr. Gabor Mate, I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but he talks about how we often say that we study siblings because, not even twins, but just siblings because they came out of the same house, they had the same childhood. And he really refutes that. He says there's no such thing as two people who had the same childhood, even if they had the same set of parents. They had a different
Yeah.
relationship with the parents. There might have been an age difference. They had different challenges. They had different personalities. And that is very, very true. So, yeah, even coming out of the same home, being twins, your childhood could be completely different.
I definitely can relate to 100%. Like my sister and I were very similar, same obviously house, but I think that she was definitely more of a fighter. She was always front and center of all the conflicts, and I hid. I was always hiding in when we were children. So my childhood, like I'll say stories of our childhood, and for a long time in my 20s, I would make it out to sound so great and positive. And she would be like, Sallie, that's not how that went. No, this is how it was. And she was like going to therapy and doing the work because she remembers it differently. So it is true. Like you just are trying to cope with it the best you can. And even though you're identical twins, you choose different avenues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really do. And in fact, I think this is more common than we know, right? Because it ties into that whole concept of you're trying to assert yourself to be different. So
Mm.
it would make sense that you would choose different paths in in your behavior, and which are really coping mechanisms, really how you're
Mm-hmm.
coping with that. So I think you're going to find this whole thing around attachment styles fascinating. So
I'm so excited. Yeah. Can you tell us? Yeah. Tell us about attachment styles.
Attachment is really an emotional bond, right? Which, of course, is so incredibly important when you're talking about twins. But really, when we talk about attachment theory and attachment styles in adulthood, we're generally talking about the relationship that you had as a baby from about 0 to 5. Those are the most suggestible years with your
Okay.
primary caregiver. So that could be a mother, it could be a father, it could be an aunt, a grandmother, it doesn't matter. The person who was your primary caregiver. Now, generally speaking, there's two broad categories. There's what we call secure attachment
Mm-hmm.
and insecure attachment. So, secure attachment is a child who is, for the most part, has a caregiver that is emotionally attuned to them. So, not just meeting their physical needs, not just changing the diapers and feeding them, but emotionally attuned. So, if the child is crying, um, the mother or the caregiver will come and they will play with the child. They will soothe the child. They will teach the child about different emotions based on the facial expressions. They will try to communicate with the child even without words, right? So it's that
Mm-hmm.
emotional attunement. And the child grows up and they learn that, okay, if I'm feeling something, I can trust myself to identify what that feeling is because I've learned, right,
Yeah.
about emotions, and it's
Mm-hmm.
safe for me to feel my emotions, and I can communicate that to my caregiver, and my caregiver will, for the most part, like consistently respond in a healthy way. So
Okay.
you could imagine that what this sends out into the world, this little child that grows up into an adult, these individuals learn that life is all about connection.
Mhm.
And they feel a great sense of trust in themselves and in other people, right? And they're usually quite emotionally regulated, right? These
Okay.
people do really well in relationships. So that's the first part.
You explained that really well. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we'll go to the other side. And, for argument's sake, we'll say 50% of the population develops in a home where they come out and they have a secure attachment. Now, we're
Okay.
never talking about perfection, never, because we all make mistakes as parents. I'm also a parent. I have two. Well, they're adult sons now. They're 18 and 20. They're both off at
Oh.
university. And so, we all make mistakes. But what we're looking for is a consistency in that attunement, right? To
Okay.
develop trust. So the other cohort of people, let's say the other 50% of our community in North America, they grow out of homes where they don't get that consistent emotional attunement. And so we're looking at things like, neglect. We're looking at
Mhm.
things like abandonment or perceived abandonment. We're looking at things like very chaotic environments, mental illness, addictions, high conflict divorces. There's all these situations that could possibly happen by which a child will not get the consistent emotional attunement that they need, right? To grow into a
Mhm.
healthy, trusting person. And so they grow up with an insecure attachment. Now, along an insecure attachment, actually, there's a spectrum. So there's subcategories. Okay.
Okay.
So the subcategories are the anxious preoccupied, that's like on one side of the continuum,
Okay.
the dismissive avoidant that's on the other side of the continuum. And somewhere in the middle, there's also a fourth category that's called the fearful avoidance. Now, let's break this down, what this actually
Yeah.
is. So, the person who grows up with an attachment leaning anxious preoccupied, their core wounds, their limiting belief, which they carry from childhood, is I will be abandoned.
Oh,
So
so sad.
they have generally experienced some form of abandonment or perceived abandonment, right? Where their feelings were not listened to, or they were ignored, or they were invalidated, or maybe the mother had to work at night and wasn't there, had to drop the child off at a grandmother's house. Children internalize all of these things, right? And so
Mhm.
at some point, there develops a core wound there that I will be abandoned. Now,
Okay.
these folks, there's always more than one core wound. These folks often have other core wounds around I will be excluded, I'm unlikable, I'm unlovable, I'm not good enough. And you can
Mm.
see how that would color their perception of how they would then show up in the world. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually very interesting. So when they grow up and they go into romantic relationships, a lot of the behaviors that they exhibited as children tied to these core wounds they start to exhibit it again. So these are
Mhm.
folks who um the internet is so mean with all these memes, but these are the folks that would be called clingy, needy. They
Okay.
need a lot of validation, a lot of reassurance. They'll call you often, like, "Are we okay?" They always think you're angry with them. Because they're
Okay.
always afraid you're going to leave them. And so, again, I want to say that attachment styles are on they're on a continuum. It's a spectrum, right? So nobody falls directly in one box, right? So you
Yeah.
can have someone who's primarily secure but leans a little anxious, which means that sometimes you have some of those behaviors. Um, so now we have on the other side of the continuum the dismissive avoidance, right? Now, the dismissive avoidant experienced a fair degree of neglect in
Okay.
childhood. And so, in response to that, they learned that they needed to deal with their emotions on their own. They needed to
Okay.
just figure things out. there's like a feigned helplessness there. Like, why am I going to bother to ask someone to help? No one's going to help me anyways. I'm on my
Mhm.
own. And so they become hyper independent, overly
Okay.
self reliant. And they are the folks who are quite conflict avoidant. They're not very in tune with their emotions. It wasn't, emotional regulation wasn't modeled for them. So they don't necessarily have uh, the skills to deal with that. They tend to repress a lot of
Okay.
their emotions. And so when they come into relationships, romantic relationships, it can be very hard because they don't have the skills, right? To be able to communicate effectively and deal with any form of conflict, which conflict always happens in relationships, right?
Yeah.
Just means that you have a different point of view. Like conflict itself is not good or bad. It's how you deal with it. And
Mhm.
then the fourth category is the fearful avoidant, which is somewhere in the middle. And the fearful avoidant actually is the rarest attachment style.
Okay.
They exhibit traits and qualities of both the anxious preoccupied and the dismissive avoidant. Now, this individual generally came out of a home where there was abuse.
Okay.
So I spent majority of my life as a fearful avoidant until I found the work on attachment styles and I did the work to relearn healthier patterns. But I want to explain how this actually emerges because the fearful avoidant is often known in a romantic sense as the hot and cold partner.
Okay.
So, you know, it's like one day I want to be with you, the next day, no, I need space from you. And then next week,
Yeah.
come over, and then I don't want to see you for 3 days. They oscillate back and forth because they have anxious tendencies and avoidant tendencies. And it
Okay.
depends on who they're interfacing with. So if they're dating someone who is dismissive avoidant, the fearful avoidant will become a lot more anxious. They will try to activate towards their love interest. And if they're
Okay.
dating someone who's anxious, they themselves will become dismissive. So they're a different ball of wax.
Yeah.
And the root of this is that a very young child becomes very confused when they have a caregiver that they love dearly, and the only thing a child wants when they're that young is the love, affection, and comfort from their caregiver, right? So
Yeah.
they're drawn to their caregiver for love, support, comfort, affection. But that caregiver is also the one who is harming them
Mhm.
physically, could be sexually, it could be emotionally, it could be psychologically, any of those ways. And so the child becomes so confused with the idea of getting close to someone, desiring closeness with someone, and
Yeah.
also knowing and fearing that that person is going to harm them. So
Yeah.
when you look at the root of that, it almost makes sense that this disorganized pattern actually appears. And what we know of fearful avoidance in adulthood and romantic relationships is that they deeply desire closeness,
Mhm.
but they're very fearful of intimacy. And so
Okay.
they're afraid to get too close. It's like one foot in, one foot out. And this is because of that disorganized pattern that created got created really early on. Now, attachment styles, it's all learned behavior, right?
Okay.
So it's not a mental illness. We don't
Mhm.
diagnose people with an
Yeah.
attachment style. Everyone has an attachment style. It's a set of rules, a patterning that was developed in your mind really early on, uh,
Okay.
for basically how to give and receive love,
Okay.
right? How to interact with other people. And so, yeah, it's incredibly interesting.
I really wish Katie was here for this, and I know she wouldn't mind me sharing it, but we had so many arguments because we just were so different in how we were, like, I guess, doing life just because based on how we were I don't know, our attachment styles probably. And it is hard to like be in a conversation when you're like, we I should we should agree on our childhood, but we just don't. That's really hard. Or like, I got over it, why can't you get over it kind of thing.
Right.
That is hard. That is hard.
It's so hard. So you don't need to agree on your childhood. In fact, the best thing to do is to simply validate that we had different childhoods.
Yeah,
Right?
that's a great point.
It's like, but you did. Like, there's no
Yeah.
question. And so don't spend any more time on that one. I'll tell that's a low hanging fruit, you know. But
Oh, I had do you mind if I ask you a question?
of course.
Um so attachment styles are developed early on in our childhood. Um is there any what like throughout your life when you go through relationships and say that you get into a terrible relationship or you get divorced and it's very traumatic, does that affect your attachment styles? Like, can you change attachment styles based on something you go through as an adult, or does it kind of just always stay the same?
You ask such great questions. You do.
Oh,
So yes. So, I mentioned that the original patterns get formed, from 0 to 5 in the earliest years, because that's when we are most suggestible. Right?
okay.
When we are so young, we're like little sponges, right? Like we
Yeah.
more or less come out of the oven, blank slate. So we pick up on those patterns really, really quickly. So that gets imprinted. But as we go through experiences in life, and if we experience a traumatic event, like a relationship that there was severe, let's say, abuse or
Hmm.
betrayal or, a breach of trust, or it's so many things can happen, right?
Hmm.
Um, that absolutely can impact our attachment style. So because
Okay.
attachment styles is learned behavior, right? We can definitely learn new things. We can undo the things we've learned. So
Okay.
it's malleable in the sense that we have this like original pattern, but we can change it. And we also
Okay.
recognize that, so it's like it works in reverse too. So for example, if I was anxious, preoccupied, which I'm not, but let's say I was, and I
Hmm.
dated a man who was secure,
Okay.
and I learned that by just being with this person, that I learned to understand that I didn't need to put so much emphasis on abandonment. I took the time to understand my own personality needs. I learned to communicate that when I'm feeling sad, I could have a conversation with someone instead of just pick a fight with them because I want their attention, right? There's a whole bunch of things
Hmm.
that we do to meet our
Yeah.
needs, which are not always healthy. Right. So
Mm.
once I learned these other healthier habits, what happens is my mind starts to change as well. And the mind is incredibly like plastic in terms of the new neural pathways that it can create. So they're
Okay.
like little highways, right? But you can create new ones. And then the old patterns that weren't serving you so well, they start to atrophy over time. So, what does that
Mm.
mean? If I spend enough time in a relationship with a secure person and I learn to self soothe and I learn to give myself the validation and reassurance that I need, and all those beautiful things, I absolutely can move much more towards secure.
Okay, that's good. I like that you say that because I get scared for like anybody who's listening and maybe they take a quiz or maybe they're listening and they're like, wow, I really identify as this. Oh man, there's something wrong with me. How do I fix it? Or can I even fix it? Am I just doomed? But I'm
Yeah.
glad that you say that you're always changing and in
Mhm.
relationship with others, you can work through this. And also, I know you have founded Securely Loved, which I'm sure you help people work through that to a
Same.
secure attachment. But I love that you enforce that you can get to a place where you feel a secure attachment.
Yeah. And it's such a great point. So, the mind, if you put in a level of effort, dedication, commitment, the mind can be, changed in the same way that we can change the physical body. It's part of the same system, right? So if I decide that I want to make changes to my physical body, maybe I want to put on some muscle, maybe I want to, I don't know, ensure that I'm more hydrated, whatever my goals are, right?
Yeah.
They're only going to come to fruition if I have a plan, dedication, and I'm consistent,
Okay. Yeah.
right? And over time, I'm going to see those changes. And so the mind is the same thing. And at Securely Love, which is my organization, there's a number of us practitioners that are working in this area. We specifically work with tools to help reprogram the subconscious mind. Now, the subconscious mind, it's interesting. There's different layers to the mind, right? There's the conscious mind, and I'm sort of pointing upwards. I've seen it depicted as, that picture of like an iceberg breaking
Oh,
water,
yeah. Yeah.
and you see just the cap of the iceberg, and there's the water line, and the majority of the iceberg is underneath the water line. So
Yeah.
your conscious mind is sort of that. It's like a little slice that's above the waterline. Your conscious mind, which is your awareness,
Hmm.
really is responsible for 3 to 5% of your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions, your behaviors.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's crazy. It's
Yeah.
and it's people like to push back on this, right? Because it's like, what do you mean? I'm entirely aware of what I'm doing. It's not that you're not aware. It's that you have a set of programs. The mind is almost like a computer where there's this set of programs, and it lives in the subconscious mind, which is right beneath your conscious awareness. So that's right below the waterline.
Okay.
And 97% or so of our thoughts, our emotions, and our behavior stem from these patterns. And so, you see this sometimes. Like, I wonder, Sallie, for example, if you've ever driven somewhere where you go often, like the grocery store or the gym, and you arrive and you have a moment of awareness, and you're like, I don't even remember making a left turn. Like, how did I get here?
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh, absolutely. Yeah.
So how did you get there?
Yeah, we're little computers, like you said, I guess.
So your subconscious mind, it knows where to go. It's like, I got this. And so you
Okay.
could be thinking about, for example, all your list of things you need to buy at the grocery store. And
Mhm.
then your mind just knows, take a left here, turn right, and then you park, and then your like awareness comes back. So we've all experienced the shift between our conscious and our subconscious mind. So when I'm talking about a set of patterns that get patterned into us and develop into these attachment styles, it's at the subconscious level.
Okay.
And so it does dictate most of our thoughts, emotions, and behavior. And so it's almost like the lens by which we interact and see the world through. So we can change that. We have ways that we can communicate with the subconscious mind to be able to reprogram new patterns. So if you have, for example, a core wound like I am unlovable,
Mhm.
right? And it's so common. It's so
Oh.
common, these core, I know, right? It's so common,
Yeah.
these core wounds. You can work to reprogram that. And it really does have a beautiful impact in helping people to reach a state of emotional regulation. Because you could imagine when someone feels these deep-seated core wounds, and we all have core wounds,
Mhm.
from our childhood again. But,
Yeah.
if you're feeling like I will be rejected, or I am unlikable, or I will be betrayed, or, I am not good enough, all of these
Yeah.
things, you could imagine the impact that that has on your thoughts and your emotions and your behavior. You may not be applying for that promotion that you really want. You may
Mhm.
not let your secret crush know that you have a thing for them because you think you're not good enough. You may not try out for the basketball team because you think, why would they pick me? It
Yeah.
impacts so much of our thinking. And what happens is that when we've got all of these core wounds and they go unchecked and we haven't done the work,
Hmm.
it just leaves us in a position where we become more and more emotionally dysregulated. And
Okay.
it's very difficult to feel a sense of happy and content and joyful when you're in what we call survival mode, when you're in fight or flight.
Hmm.
When you're in
Okay.
fight or flight, like you're just surviving, right?
Yeah.
You're not in your creative and your joyful self. So that's the byproduct of doing the work on your subconscious mind and working towards secure attachment is that you can develop such a healthier relationship with yourself,
Oh
what you
my
think of
gosh.
yourself,
Yeah.
right? And with relationships with others. And so the byproduct is that not only do you feel better and you could start emotionally regulate and you don't feel maybe so anxious or you don't feel so sad or you don't feel so hyper attuned to everyone else,
Hmm.
and your relationships can then become much more fulfilling. So there's so many benefits to this work, but it really beautiful question. We absolutely can work on the mind just like we can work on the body.
Okay, that's awesome to hear. I was just thinking during that while you were explaining it, like if somebody has a core wound and say that the core wound is like you mentioned, like you believe you're not good enough. Say that you're like, I don't think I'm good enough. I'm never doing enough. Can you heal it even in relationship with those people that kind of give you that feeling? Like, is it possible for a child to heal with if they're in relation with those parents that kind of, I don't know, make them feel that way? Is that possible?
So so you're saying, can you heal when you're still actively in the situation?
Yeah. Or is it
How old
like
is
one
the
of those,
child?
um, I don't know. I guess let's say that they're a teenager. They have to be in relationship with their parents and they can't like not be in relationship. Is there a way for them to identify that and work within themselves at that time? Or is this something that
There
you
is.
work on as an adult more?
So I work with adults,
Okay.
but we do know that teenagers do have the capacity to start understanding this, and start delineating, understanding their emotions if they've never been taught, which emotions, how they present in the body. Like a lot of people actually can't even identify different emotions, but in terms of the physical sensations that they present in the body. That's how
Okay.
disconnected they are.
Oh,
And so, doing that early work can be very helpful. Um, Obviously, if the child is still in a situation where they're being neglected or abused or whatnot, it's that's a tough one, right? Because
yeah.
they're still in that situation. It would be best to remove them from that situation, right? So a lot of times adults recognize that their patterning isn't healthy when they've gone through a couple of romantic relationships
Yeah.
and they go, okay, I keep picking the wrong people. I keep picking, the person who's wrong for me. And they start to realize that their patterns are causing a problem in their life,
Yeah,
right?
and I think you're right because, yeah, I was just thinking, even as adults, I think that's when we really start thinking about our attachment styles because we're, yeah, like you said, getting into romantic relationships. We're seeing how we act in conflict, and we really look back on our childhood and how we were raised and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know why I was like, I wonder if like kids can think of that, but I don't even know if kids, honestly, when this is off topic, but the Inside Out movies, that is like all the emotions, Disney just the Pixar movie,
I
like
haven't seen it,
anxiety.
but like I
So,
know what you're talking about.
yes. So, when that came out, all the adults were like making a big deal of it because they're like, "Oh my God, they're putting names to emotions." Like I think even that we didn't have necessarily when we were growing up. We weren't talking about it as much. So to hear my 4-year-old talk about anxiety because he knows it from the movie, like that's insane, you know? So I
Yes.
think times are changing, but
Mhm.
okay, that makes sense that we would do the work more as adults. I see that in my own life. That makes sense because you're more
You, you know,
reflective.
you know what it is, Sally? It's like we need to reach a certain level of maturity, and really our
Yeah.
brains mature around the age of 25. We definitely need to reach a level of maturity to have critical thought, to
Mhm.
have points of reflection, to experience a little bit of life outside of our family of origin, to then be able to reflect back. So all of that's really helpful. Now, so I don't typically work with teenagers, but if I was going to work with a teenager, really I would just start with, again, emotional regulation, which is like, let's identify which emotions you're feeling, how, what sensations are coming up for you in your body. What are some of the thoughts associated with that? Because there are
Mhm.
always thoughts associated to emotions.
Yeah.
And so I would start to teach that person to understand their own mind, not necessarily start to reprogram their subconscious mind. It's still developing if they're still in the environment. I think
Yeah.
in that case, I would have, if I had full liberty, I'd have a discussion with the parents.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's a great point. Yeah, I asked just for like I don't know why. I was just thinking of that and like for kids, but I definitely like appreciate your answer and that makes sense. And also when you're thinking about attachment styles, I do think there's a degree of honesty you need to have with yourself to be like this is how I deal with things and it's not the best. Like that takes some maturing because I think when I was young, I would just lie and be like no, I'm dealing with everything great. Like, this is healthy. This I'm normal,
Because
Like I
you
wouldn't
were avoidant. You were like,
Yes.
everything's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it does take a level of maturity to actually sit down and be uncomfortable with your like reality. So that's a good point too.
Yeah, this work is really about authenticity
Oh
and
my gosh.
becoming.
No, sorry, I'm interrupting you. I That was something that drew me to your profile, actually. I
Thank
wrote
you.
it down. So you said, I believe that radical honesty is the way to authentically connect to people.
Yes.
And I love that you said that because that's really terrifying for some people. And I love that you said that because like that's the point of like our podcast. We're like, we just want to be real and to erase the shame. Like everybody goes through stuff. And I love that you say that.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's not easy, by the way, because,
No.
yeah, because, everyone will agree in principle that we all want authentic relationships until they hear something that they don't like.
Yeah.
Right? Or right. And so it's a two-way street. So I try to have an authentic relationship with my children, with everyone really, but I'll use my children as an example. Again, they're 18 and 20. I have two men, two sons. They're
Oh,
they're both living in different cities. They're going to university. Um, and I'll tell them how I feel, and they'll tell me how they feel. It's
I love
reciprocal.
that.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and you know what? Sometimes I don't love it, right? I don't love to hear that they make fun of me because every time they come over, I make them chicken and carrots. So that's because I'm afraid when they're away at university, they eat like crap. So I'm trying to they come to me and I'm trying to feed them properly, right? I bought them like probiotics and vitamins and they didn't take anything. So one day
Oh my
they sat
gosh.
me down and they were like, we're a little bored of chicken and carrots. My instinct was like, I was like hurt. I was like, what's wrong with my chicken? Right?
Yeah. It's healthy. It's protein. No.
I'm like, you need the carrots. And I started rationalizing and justifying. And then I was like, okay, I got it. You want something else? They're like, yeah, something else. And I'm like, fair. Right. So you have to
Yeah.
learn to all, I mean, that's like a really surface level example.
Of course. Yeah.
But like, if you're going to expect, that people are going to receive your authenticity, you have to be ready to receive it from others too. And that's not always easy because you're not going to like everything you hear.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, but it really does elevate your relationship to the next level. I promise you it does. And your point around like not being burdened by shame, right? Like I am who I am, and you know, I continue to work on myself, but that level of self-love and acceptance, um, that also comes from moving towards a secure attachment. It's all very much tied into those earliest years in which we learned how to relate to ourselves
Hmm.
and to the others closest to us. So yeah, it's all
Oh.
circular. Your first question you asked, and I wrote it down because you asked this at the top of the session. You talked about, is there a way to ensure that children, you know, come out of a home with secure attachment? And I will say that the thing that is most important is to allow children to have space for their emotions and to consistently respond. It doesn't mean that you're going to like everything they say, and it doesn't mean that you have to accept bad behavior. That's not what I'm saying. But if a child, for example, is frustrated, so I'll use this as an example. The child asks for a cookie before dinner, and you say, "No, my love, there's no cookies before dinner." You know that, right? Because the child already knows. They're just pushing you. Uh, and so the child gets frustrated and they stomp off and they slam their bedroom door.
Hmm.
I've had similar things happen years ago
We
when I was.
have. We're going through that. We're going through that, so I can relate.
So the fact that the child is feeling frustration is not a bad thing.
Hmm.
Their behavior and how they project that is not so good. Right. So,
Hmm.
what I would suggest in that case is to let the child calm down. You know, your own child, 10, 15, 20 minutes. Don't wait 3 days. Like it has to be in the
Oh,
moment, right?
yeah.
10, 15, 20 minutes. Knock on the door respectfully. Can I come in? Don't barge into a child's room. Can I come in? The respect that you show will always be reciprocated. So, if
Mm,
you want that respect, show it, right? So can I come in? And you, first thing you do is you validate. I can see you're frustrated. I understand. It's really annoying that you need to ask for a cookie. Why can't you just take the cookie? Right? Yeah, it's
yeah.
really annoying. I just wanted a cookie. I wasn't asking for very much. Okay. So what I used to tell my kids is that you know that what's important to me is in this order: your safety, your health, and then your happiness. Every decision I make is always based on that list in that order: safety, your health, and your happiness. So, having a cookie affects your health before dinner. So, to me, that's more important than your happiness. And you don't have to agree. You don't have to agree with me. But what I also don't want to see happen is I don't want to see you slam your door because I find that disrespectful.
Hmm. Oh my
That's it.
gosh. You're
Like,
such a good mom. That was the, like, best because we have a 6-year-old right now. So, like, these tantrums happen. Like, this is
mhm,
real life, you know? And in the moment, like, yeah, like, I love that you remind us, like, slow down, give them the respect that you're looking for, knock on their door, make sure you can come in, and then, like, act like an adult, like, sit down and have
yeah.
a conversation with them, like, don't go in hot and fiery like how they stormed off. So
So
I
these
love that you
are,
say that.
yeah, these are the teachable moments. These are the moments that the children are going to learn how to behave, right? These are the
Mhm.
moments they're going to take into adulthood, right? So if you can calmly say, I understand when you're frustrated. This is why I did what I did. And please, the next time you're frustrated and you want time alone, I will respect that. Tell me that you want 20 minutes alone, no problem. I will not respect you slamming my door. There's your
Mhm.
boundary. right?
Yeah.
So, and I promise you, if more parents did this, like calmly, but what parents normally do is they react,
Yeah.
right? Like they'll grab the cookie away and they'll scream, or then they'll fight over the cookie, and then like it's a whole chaotic thing. And that just, what does that teach the child?
Yeah. I know, and I think a lot of people too in my generation were grown up. We grew up with like, and it wasn't necessarily my parents, but I know a lot of people that grew up with like really authoritative parents, like very like you must obey because we're your parents kind of thing. And I've seen people affected by that style of parenting. And so I really do want to do it right, but we saw such a different way of parenting, you know? And my home, it was a little more reactive. I think my mom did a really good job being patient with us, but um, I can be hot sometimes. So like when things happen, like I have to like be like calm down. You're the adult. Like you're the adult. So I that thank you for sharing that because as a parent you don't want to mess up. You don't want them to like form an insecure attachment or I just I really wanted ways that parents could hear and be like, "Okay, what can I do to help my kid have a secure attachment in the future?" So thank you for gave you gave a great example.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. What you're doing is you're creating safety for the kid. So everyone who has an insecure attachment style, whether it be anxious preoccupied, whether it be dismissive avoidant or fearful avoidant, they all share one core wound, which is I am unsafe.
Mm,
And so what you're doing is you're creating safety. So it's okay to feel frustrated. I'm with
mhm.
you. I'm frustrated too.
Yeah.
But this is how we're going to handle our frustration. We're not going to take it out on each other. And, I'm going to do this, you're going to do that. Name the emotion, give space for the emotion, validate the emotion. If the child is stifled in that moment, the only thing they learn is to repress, or they learn that that
Mm,
emotion is bad, or they Dr. Gabor Mate actually talks a lot about this, how
yeah.
children who are under, strict rule of a parent, they will disassociate from their authentic self in order to align to the parent's desires to keep that emotional bond.
That's
Children
so
need to
sad.
be bond. It's so sad, and it happens so commonly because children
Mhm.
need to keep that emotional bond with their caregiver. And so they learn very quickly. Like in my home growing up, anger was not tolerated. Like in
Yeah.
my generation, it was like, be a cute little girl, sit in the corner, be seen and not heard. So it
Exactly,
didn't
yeah.
matter, right? It didn't matter
Yeah.
if I was angry, I was to put a smile on my face.
I would
Like,
venture to say, like, I think I even remember thinking, like, being sad or angry was a bad thing. Like, I really
mhm.
thought that that was something I was doing that was bad, you know? And it's so different now where you can say, no, we all have these emotions and it's healthy to have all these emotions, but here's how you deal with them. But, like, I think I had shame around having those emotions back in the day.
Yeah, and that's likely because when you exhibited them, your caregivers responded poorly. So either they ignored you, they shamed you, they punished you, they invalidated you. I could go on and on and on. You
Mhm.
learned that I am not going to be in good favor with my caregiver if I behave that way. So, regardless of how I'm feeling, I better pretend that I am feeling another way so my caregiver's happy with me.
Yeah.
That's that's the root of people pleasing. That's the
Yeah.
trauma response, fawning. Yeah,
Oh my god. No, I
right?
mean, it's crazy. I and it's funny what you, like, are now reflecting on is, like, my husband and I both are very similar in that way. We both kind of have reflected back on that and gone to therapy and do have some people pleaser tendencies. But I think that a lot of our generation does. Like, I think it's very, very common. So it's something that I think a lot of people are working through, and it's important for them to
Yeah,
hear that and kind
yeah,
of why that happens.
yeah, absolutely, right? So, again, you're doing you're doing your kids a beautiful favor by just validating their feelings, helping them name it, helping them identify where they feel it in their body, right?
Mhm.
Because so many adults grow up and like they're like, I don't know, my stomach hurts. And I'm like, why? Are you nervous? They're like, what do you mean? And I'm like,
Yeah.
if your stomach hurts. They're like, no, I probably just ate something bad. And I'm like, like
No,
people are
that's so
so disconnected,
yeah.
right? It's interesting, but they never learned this. They didn't learn it in their family of origin. They didn't learn it at school. They didn't learn it from their friends. They didn't learn it. And
Oh my
so
gosh.
it's a skill, right? It's a skill. It's like anything else. So anyways, teaching your kids that all emotions, there's a time and place for all emotions, like even anger. Anger is
Mhm.
so useful to us. Like
Yeah.
anger will guide you specifically when you feel like a boundary of yours has been violated,
Mhm.
right? You'll feel anger and you'd be like, if you think about it, because anger is a secondary emotion, it usually comes up afterwards when you're thinking about something. You'll be
Mhm.
like, huh, that conversation with Bev I had, I'm angry about it. There was something there I didn't like.
Mhm.
Guiding you, right? So what
Yeah.
we do with it, how we express it, and if we impact the people around us, that's where it becomes dangerous.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I remember always hearing anger was a secondary emotion, but I've never actually had it explained to me like how it's secondary. So, no,
So,
that makes
so
sense.
yeah. So a primary emotion would be something that you feel in the moment, right? So in the moment, like you might be frustrated, or you might be sad, or you might be irritable, or you might feel anxious, or and a secondary emotion is generally something that's felt afterwards, like outside of the primary event, right? So it's like like anger, which is again, it's a point of reflection after something has happened.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay. Well, I know we're a little bit past
Oh
an
my God, we could
hour.
talk forever, you and I.
Seriously, I feel like I could talk forever because I just like love hearing everything you have to say. And also, I feel like there's so many untouched grounds with just the like twinhood and everything. Um, like, and I have so many questions still. Like, I'm like, oh my God, this
You
is
know
so
what, Sallie?
amazing.
I had this idea. I don't know what you think about this, but when your sister is back, I would be
Okay.
happy to come back onto your program again, your beautiful platform. Maybe do something, the three of us,
Oh my
where we
God.
could dive in a little bit into I mean, this would be, a little bit vulnerable. So you have to decide if this is something you want to do.
Okay.
But because you've mentioned that you and your sister have very different coping styles,
Yes, we
very
do.
different attachment styles. So we can sort of dive into that a little bit. And I think that, me playing the therapist role, it would be interesting for people to see the juxtaposition of the two of you. And I think for the two of you, it would be helpful to understand each other a little bit better.
I think that would be awesome. And I know Katie would love it too because we are very committed to like having a good relationship, but we know that we are so different. Like but we're so different, but we're also not. Like
I
when it
suspect you're not that different.
yeah, like it's so weird like how we go through life and how we perceive things can be different, but at the same time I feel like there's nobody that knows me better. There's nobody that you know what I mean? I don't know. We always say we're so different, but then also our morals are very aligned. So, I don't know. It would be so awesome to do that. I would really, really love that. And I think that she would really love that too, truly.
I'd be
Honestly,
happy.
we needed that in our 20s when we were fighting every single like week. Like, why are you like this? Why are you making these choices? Like we got through that somehow. I don't know how, but we did have some years where we were not close, and a lot of people don't know that. But now we live 7 houses down from each other, and we're raising kids together, and we are close. But we had some years that were not the best for us. So,
Yeah.
um,
It's not
yeah,
easy being twins. There's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of complexities there, and there would be a lot of sensitivity around attention, validation, reassurance that you would have or not gotten from your caregivers. Like there's an innate competition there that people don't necessarily understand. And there's also this idea that, it's the twins should be so close. There's like a pressure there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
It
often
is.
you do have very different personalities.
Yeah, and also I think you need to learn to like how the other one like receives best, because we can be really blunt with each other, and we've hurt each other by like our bluntness or avoidance, or like where one would avoid and one would want to deal with it type thing. And yeah, so you know what I'm talking about, right?
I do. It's just, yeah, it's not easy. So, I mean, we can unpack
Oh.
that together, the three of us, if
Oh
you
my
want. I
gosh,
think it would be
thank you for
interesting.
offering that. Thank you for offering that. That is so sweet of you. Thank you.
Sure. I'd love
Oh,
that.
no,
I'd love
I've loved every minute of talking with you, and I want you to tell our listeners where they can find you if they want to find you or hear more about Securely Loved.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. So, my website is securelyloved.com. We are a group of practitioners that work in the space of relationship and attachment trauma. We offer individual counseling, couples counseling, and we also have weekly group sessions, which are, a really nice way to learn in a group and to learn the basics of moving towards secure attachment. So we offer that as well. On our website, again, securelyloved.com, there's a little link that says take the attachment quiz. So this is a great place to start, just as a point of awareness. It's free. You take the little quiz and it sort of spits out, this is where you are on the attachment continuum if you're interested in understanding your own mind and pattern. And then should you want to book a consult with me or any of the other practitioners that I work with, we offer a free 20-minute consult where we can talk about, what it is that your objectives are. So check out the website. We're also all over social media. My adult children have taught me how to use TikTok.
Oh, that's amazing.
No, right? TikTok and Instagram. And so we're all over. Instagram is securely_loved. TikTok is securely_loved. We're on YouTube. So yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for
Perfect.
the opportunity and for the beautiful discussion. I really enjoyed it.
No, I did too. And I'll make sure to put all your information in our bio of this podcast episode. I did take the quiz on your website, and it was super quick. And it was very, very good to see. I need to go back and look at exactly what I got, because I had percentages in like every category. But one was way higher, but then there was like little
Which
bit in
one
each
was
one.
way higher?
Secure attachment was set as 74, I believe.
Okay.
But I had like little percentages in other areas, and I want to go back and look at what those areas were, because I'm like, I think I have an idea, but
Yeah.
I need to go look
Yeah,
now
I think
that
I
I
have
know
an
more.
idea too.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
like if we decide to do something together, the three of us, it would be great for both you and your sister to take the quiz and like bring the
Yeah.
results, and then we could talk about what it means and
Yeah.
how
Oh my
that actually
gosh.
plays out.
Yeah. How cool is that? That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. Truly, I have loved this conversation. I thank you so much for sitting down and just sharing some of your knowledge, and you're just amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're so much fun.
Okay. Hi, everyone. It's Sallie. We're going to leave our story there for today and pick up next week on Twin Study After Dark. If you've enjoyed our podcast today, please rate, review, and subscribe. We'll meet again next week for more Twin Studies.